All right, yeah, here we go. We're going into it, and action.
So let's say you're shooting a spooky scene and you want it to feel dark and scary. So you try turning down all the lights.
But now you can barely see anything. It's dark, sure, but it's also noisy, and it's hard to tell where you're supposed to look.
But when you bring your lights back up to get proper exposure, you see too much detail. There's no mystery in the image anymore. So how do we light a scene to feel dark while still making sure the audience can see everything we want them to?
The paradox of making scenes feel dark while still conveying information clearly is one of the tricks of great cinematography. See, shadows, much like light, are just another tool in your toolbox. It's the ink on the paper, the mystery and the magic and the terror of cinema. It allows our imaginations as an audience to run wild.
In this lesson, we'll go over 3 techniques where you can let shadows do the heavy lifting for you.
A disclaimer. Today we'll be going over on-set lighting techniques that can apply to any camera from an iPhone to an Alexa. The concept of creating and controlling darkness in camera will be addressed in another video.
So to get started, let's take a look at some examples from Harold, a short in the Halloween spirit that we filmed specifically for this tutorial. So let's say you want a subject to remain completely mysterious. Perhaps you want the audience to know that they're there, but you don't want them to know who they are. You can do this by creating a lighting effect called a silhouette.
So what is a silhouette? Simply put, it's when your background is exposed, but your subject is not, removing all details and turning them into a dark shape. And there are lots of ways to accomplish this. You can light your background instead of your main actor, or place them in front of a window with light coming in, shoot them in front of existing natural light, or really anything else you can come up with.
When you're on set, a good way to make this possible is to keep the lighting for your background and your actor separate. Just take this hallway for example. John and I are being lit separately than the rest of this hallway, so when we do this,
we are now silhouetted by the brightly lit background. What you're seeing here is an important concept in cinematography called separation, which means there is a clear distinction or contrast between the subject and the background. This applies when the subject is dark and the background is bright, or vice versa, but not every shot requires separation. In certain instances in our short, we lit our subject from the front and let our background go completely dark, allowing the details of the space to remain a mystery, just like we're doing now.
Now that we're familiar with separation, let's take a look at another lighting technique that puts separation to work.
Edge lighting is a type of backlighting, which is exactly what it sounds like, lighting a subject from behind relative to camera. Let's take a look at this lighting setup. Notice that Kate, our subject, is kept in between the camera and our light source, a 1x1 LED. The source is located behind her and to the side, facing towards camera. Unlike with silhouette where we don't light the subject at all, we are lighting our subject, but we're lighting it in such a way the shadows it casts are facing towards camera.
This allows us to keep things looking nice and dark. And as John said, edge light is only one variation of backlight. Here's an edge light, which you just saw, which comes from behind and to the side of the subject.
Come on, I'm trying to read.
And here's a hair light, which is behind and from above.
That's pretty nice.
And here's a true backlight, where the light is coming from directly behind the subject. Again, notice how all of these forms of backlight create separation by defining the edges of our subject and creating shadows and keeping them from blending into the background.
Could you ask them to stop? They listen to you.
I don't know what you're talking about, dude.
This kind of lighting, with the dark side to camera, is extremely popular in cinema because it naturally creates contrasts and separation on the subject, and often implies conflict within the character.
But there's one more type of shadowy lighting that might interest you.
Here you see Kate's whole face is lit, but the light is broken up by shadows created from the rain and the curtains. There's not really an official name for light with lots of shadows in front of it because there are so many kinds, so we're going to call it fragmentary light.
We achieved this particular shot by placing a rain bar and lace curtains in between our light source and our subject to break up the light and create shadows. You'll want to use a hard, distant light source if you want the shape of these shadows to be clear and defined.
You can see this in countless films, and it's a great way to create suspense or conflict while still keeping light on the character's face. You can create whatever patterns or shapes you want as long as it makes sense in the context of the scene.
Well, we hope these 3 lighting concepts have given you a good place to start from when creating dark and shadowy scenes, and we encourage you to try them on your own and see what works for you.
Please always remember, shadow, just like light, is just one more tool for you to use as a cinematographer. It can draw your eye the way light can, it can create wonder, terror, and ignite the imaginations of your audience.
And for those of you who are wondering how to work with situations where you just don't have enough light available, we have another tutorial in the works for you, so look out in the future for... Whoa, what happened?
Did you see that?
Is there something wrong with that bulb? Like, oh God!